guys, welcome to Amity Tracks, 1982. What's going on in 82? Ronald Reagan is still your president. The first computer virus is discovered. Also, Time Magazine's Man of the Year is a computer. Chariots of Fire wins Best Picture that year. Britain goes to war with Argentina over the Falkland Islands. You have the Tylenol poisonings. I remember that happening, which I believe is why we have, you buy medicines today, is why they have the seal and all that kind of stuff, is because of the Tylenol thing. Epcot Center opens in Disney World, as well as the Vietnam Wall debuts in Washington, D.C. Probably one of the most effective memorials I think I've ever seen. Well, all right. Man, 82. What a year. A lot of great stuff in 82. This kind of early part of the 80s, man, I love this part of the 80s. Okay, well, so we're gonna top 10. We'll start with the top 10, then hit you with a bunch of honorable mentions. And then, of course, when we're done, in the comments, you guys let me know what you love from 82. You agree with the rankings or not? All the good stuff. Let's get some good conversations going about the music of 1982. So I'm going to start with my number 10 choice, which is Peter Gabriel's Security. That's some real creepy album art there. Now, it's kind of interesting. I think Gabriel intended for this to be just the fourth self-titled. If you look at it, Security isn't on there anywhere. But Geffen insisted on finally having other titles on here, because it's interesting. If you look at the label, it says Peter Gabriel Security, but doesn't say Security on the album cover. But yeah, probably his most atmospheric, I think. Obviously, if you set aside his soundtrack work, but just of his, sort of regular mainstream records that he released, definitely his most atmospheric. A lot of it there's sort of synthesizers setting the mood. These kind of blankets of synthesizers. And then continuing to explore these world music rhythms that he really got into on the previous record. Yeah, and there's only a handful of real kind of up-tempo stuff. Shock the Monkey, it's a big hit off of here. Kiss of Life is another sort of up-tempo, but everything else I think is real. Kind of takes its time to unfold. So yeah, I mean, I I love almost everything he does, but I think this is pretty unique in his catalog. So coming in at number 9 is a record we featured on one of our earlier cult albums episodes, but here it is. And like we did in that video, here we've got to give a shout out to our friend Vinyl Richie, because I was watching his 1982 countdown, and he featured this record on there. And I was familiar with the hit song, which the album is Wall of Voodoo, Call of the West, right? Yeah, Call of the West. I need to get this on vinyl. I love it, but for CD for now is okay. But yeah, Call of the West. And so Mexican Radio, right, is the big hit off of there. And I I have Mexican Radio on, these KTEL releases. Remember the KTEL stuff? Sort of the old version of Rhino, in some ways. Yeah, there it is. Mexican Radio's right there. There, that one. On this KTEL thing. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I pulled this as Hot Tracks. I had all these early 80s KTEL comps. Sound System. Today's Top Hits. Here's Street Beat. New Music Hot Sounds. And then Dancing Madness. Hot hits to get you moving. These KTEL things were great. Anyway, point is, I had Mexican Radio forever, and I always liked it, but I guess I always considered it like this, I don't know, novelty hit. It kind of was. But it was Vinyl Richie's enthusiastic review of this record on his list that sort of piqued my interest. Like, you know what? I will go check out the rest of it. And man, Love it. Love it. It's I think sort of like I described in the cult video. It's kind of this interesting combination of, I don't know, Kraftwerk, Devo mixed with sort of Ennio Morricone, you know, soundscapes, and really good, a lot of drum machines and stuff, but actually really good songwriting too. Interesting lyrics. I mean, the whole thing. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Coming in at number 8, one of my favorite bands, and they're in the middle of one of my favorite streaks of theirs. They went through a lot of different phases. Talking about King Crimson Beat. King Crimson Beat. And I just love, I've talked about this before, but love that 80s quartet, of Adrian Belew on lead vocals and guitar, and Robert Fripp on guitar, and Tony Levin on bass, and the stick, and Bill Bruford on the drums. That's just I love how they keep the experimentation going, but they also really kind of diving into some of the new wave sounds. It's a great combination. This is probably their most, out of the that trio of records, they're in their 80s incarnation, probably the most commercial sounding in some ways. But I mean, Neurotica, The Howler, Requiem, you still got plenty of experimentation on there. So you don't forget it is King Crimson, right? Beat. All right, number 7. Number 7. I bet you guys thought you would never have to hear me talk about this band again, at least in these yearly countdown videos. Because what possibly, good could they have to say in the 80s? Not much. But I'm here to tell you this. Creatures of the Night by Kiss kicks ass. This is so awesome. This is probably their heaviest record. I mean, I'm telling you, man, Creatures of the Night is awesome. Of course, you have Eric Carr in there on the drum seat. Peter Criss is out. Who was he? I think he was the Fox. I think that was his makeup persona. Before they would, I think it was after this one where they get rid of the makeup for that period. Now, interesting thing here, Ace Frehley, who is my favorite member of Kiss, doesn't play a note on this record, even though he's on the album art. Truth be told, he had left the band by then, but they didn't announce it yet because I don't know, putting his makeup face on this album cover would still draw dollars, I think, because Ace Frehley was always a real popular member of that band. But yeah, to be honest with you, the guitar work is really by committee on this. Vinnie Vincent plays a lot, and he, of course, will be an official member on the next record for a short stint. Bruce Kulick, I think Bruce Kulick's on here. I don't know. There's quite a few guitarists on here, but man, this is heavy. We turn into just great hard rock. I mean, the title track bursts through the speakers. And interesting thing, War Machine, co-written by Bryan Adams, of all people. Anyway, Creatures of the Night rocks. Number 6 doesn't quite rock, but it's awesome. Now, the music obviously was composed and released in the film. This is a soundtrack in 1982. That's when the film came out. But a full soundtrack of this music wasn't released until sometime in the 90s, is when you could finally get the full soundtrack version of this. But music, I'm going with the year that the music was actually composed and put out there on the film. The Blade Runner soundtrack by Vangelis is, I think, remarkable. I mean, you just talk about just amazing, again, moods. Yeah. And I think so influential on so much soundtrack work, I mean, obviously using synthesizers and but just to create this dystopian mood. Yeah. Here's the date on here, 1994. So I guess 94 was when the actual full soundtrack was finally made available instead of just pieces of it. But I'm putting it with 82 because that's when the music actually was done. All right. Now, number 5. Number 5 is an interesting record. I talked about a one-hit wonder or kind of novelty song, either one actually, um, before, but or at least perceived. But same thing with this guy. So this guy, this is his debut. I really admire this guy's work. I'll talk about him a little bit later too on future videos. But his big hit off of this record was, definitely kind of came across as a novelty song. But man, the whole record is just brilliant. Talk about Thomas Dolby, Golden Age of Wireless. Now, this is one of these records, you don't see this too often as much in the 80s, but one of these records where there was a very different UK version. This is the American version. The UK version didn't have She Blinded Me with Science on it. That was tacked on later for the US. Very different feels of these. I grew up with, and I think, for me, this is, the version of the record. But what's cool about it is beyond. I mean, and I'm fine with She Blinded Me with Science. It's a fun '80s track, but the rest of this is really good. Kind of thematic, with technology obviously as a key element. Some Cold War overtones here. One of Our Submarines, one of the best songs on here, is great. This whole thing, though, man. I mean, if you just look at the sound titles, you can see this obsession with technology. Radio silence, airwaves, flying north, weightless, wind power, commercial breakup, one of our submarines. Yeah, and just superlative synth pop, but I think of the highest order. Really interesting. Interesting note. When I was in law school, I took this seminar on intellectual property, like copyrights, trademarks, and all that. And Dolby, Dolby Laboratories sued Thomas Dolby, um, and I wrote a whole paper on that case. It's really interesting. Anyway, fascinating stuff. All right, number four. Number four. I mentioned that this guy put out a series of great records in the early 80s that I think were better than the records he was simultaneously putting out with his band, The Who. So I'm talking about Pete Townsend's All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes. Brilliant. I mean, this is brilliant. Especially lyrically. Man, the lyrics are so good. God, this is great. It was so interesting, kind of similar with Bowie, during when he put out his brilliant Station to Station. Uh, Pete Townsend has spoken similarly of he was sort of in the throes of a lot of drug addiction during this period, and he talks about not remembering much at all about recording this. Well, whatever, it's still brilliant lyrically and everything else. Exquisitely bored. I always thought I could hear that as a great Who song, but the rest of this, like Slit Skirts, um, Stardom in Action, Somebody Saved Me, man, all that stuff. I think is a bit too personal to be Who tracks. Really, it really belongs as a Pete Townsend solo album. Um, I'll tell you, I think this is his best work as a solo artist. I think this is his best solo record. It's just I have loved this record for forever. So great. But we got to get into the top three here. Now this one is interesting here in my 3 slot. I have a record that forever this was the version, so to speak, that I had. I'm talking about Madness. Now, the record I want to feature is this one. Madness Presents the Rise and Fall. But this was only released in the UK. Or I don't know, maybe other countries too, but it wasn't released in the US. Let's put it that way. This was not released in the US. Instead, in the US, we got this sort of interesting kind of hybrid, sort of part compilation, part this. So about half of the tracks on this are from here. And then the other tracks are somewhat random, tracks chosen from previous records. And I'll tell you what, I grew up with this, and I still have a great fondness for this. This still plays wonderfully. have a great fondness for this, but the actual record is this: is Madness Presents the Rise and Fall. I think just a brilliant, um, really concept piece. I liken it to sort of an '80s version of like the Kinks, Village Green Preservation Society. It's sort of a look at English life, but obviously from 1982 versus the late '60s. And although with the Kinks, it was even then it was sort of this idealized look at the past from the '60s. But this is a little bit different, but it's a similar idea at least. It's this loose concept, but I mean the songs are just fantastic. Now this features, of course, the big hit that was in the U.S., "Our House." Madness, in some ways, in the U.S. were kind of a sort of a one-hit wonder, even though I know they were huge in the UK, had a ton of hits. I love Madness. I think they're fantastic. But man, really, that first side is so strong. Rise and Fall, Tomorrow's Just Another Day, Blue Skin Beast. God, I mean, just really expanding kind of beyond their, their roots, and really experimenting. Really good. I mean, this is I think brilliant concept, loose concept record. I mean, it's not like a story all the way through it, but just sort of looking at English life with just I think their best batch of songs on any of their records. So at number two, I have the most meticulously produced record. I don't know, one of them at least. I mean, every sound is just it's pristine, and some might say overproduced, but it's when it's this good, it's almost like Steely Dan or something. It's like the pristine production is like part of the greatness on this one. Roxy Music, Avalon. Yeah, I mean, really, Brian Ferry's baby here. But man, I mean, there's not a single misplaced sound on here. More Than This, of course, is great. I love the main thing. What kind of groove on the main thing is so infectious. But really, start to finish, first note to last note, nothing is tossed off or by mistake. It is a meticulously produced, beautiful pop record. Roxy, I mean, far distant from their, kind of art rock, almost progressive in some ways roots. Very different than that, but a fine kind of final studio record to go out on. Avalon. But my number one, did a video on this band a long time ago, and I simply think this is one of the great one, within the top 10 of great records of the 1980s. Um, and it's my number one for this year. It's perfect in every way, evocative of the era, but in all the great ways. And like I said in that video, I'm talking about Duran Duran's Rio. I mean, everything about this record, from the cover art to the music, the production. Like I said in that video, they're upside down. There they are. Like I said in that video, their secret weapon was, or is, because actually they're still putting out real good music. Their most recent record's great, but their secret weapon is they're actually really great musicians. I mean, yeah, they were sort of pin up, cover a Tiger Beat and all that. The flashy, beautifully done MTV videos, all that. But beyond all that, the music was there. The musicianship, the songwriting. I mean, just you're talking about a great bass player. John Taylor, man. I mean, just listen to the title track Rio and just focus on the bass line throughout that thing. Fantastic. Anyway, I mean, this takes you back immediately to this era, at least a certain perception of this era, even if it wasn't totally accurate. But kind of the glamorous view of it, and just decadent, but again, the songs are there, really good songs, stand the test of time, I say. Well, all right, let's real quick go through a bunch of honorable mentions, because there are a lot. I have this on CD somewhere. I just didn't pull it down, but Asia's debut, right? Showing Steve Howe from Yes could also, kind of go in a little poppier direction, but great stuff. Let's see. The Cure put out their, let's have this on CD, but they're the third in that sort of early goth trilogy before they would start to experiment with some more kind of pop sounds. But oh yeah, Pornography, name of the record. Right? And then finally, here, let me grab this stack of records here. 1982. Have I not mentioned a big record from 80? Oh, yeah, maybe I could feature this in my cult videos, right? Because not many people listened to this, did they? Michael Jackson's Thriller was 82. I love Thriller. I'm not, I'm not immune to its charms. I just think there was some better stuff out that year. I well, one of the because I mean, obviously the peaks of Thriller are some of the peaks of popular music, just pop music. Billie Jean, Beat It. Um, I love Human Nature. So did Miles Davis, right? Miles Davis did beautiful cover of Human Nature in the '80s. Thriller. Yeah, I'm a big horror movie fan. I love Vincent Price and Thriller and all that. PYT was great. Want to be starting something's funky. But if you're gonna be honest, I mean, Baby Be Mine, the cringy, The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney, and The Lady in My Life. I think those three are lesser tracks. So I don't think it's perfect all the way through. This is kind of fun. I have the regular record in here, but then my wife had at some point picked up the picture disc, which I just kind of throw in here with my regular version of the record. But yeah, another Jackson put out a great record this year. That's Joe Jackson, not Michael's father, Joe Jackson, but Joe Jackson, the musician. This Joe Jackson. And Night and Day, which, man, this a weaker year, this would have made my top 10. This is fantastic record. Stepping Out. Just one of I remember loving that song when that came out. It's just such a great song. Breaking Us Into, yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And such a, you're kind of bringing in some of these sort of kind of jazzy elements in there. Just, kind of different for 1982, but that was great. All right, let's speed it up here. We gotta get through these. I found when I did my Dire Straits video a while back, um, I guess one of the things that I found out the most with the comments and just the discussion was that a lot of Dire Straits fans love this record the most. Now I didn't. I mean, it's great, but I didn't rank it number one in my countdown. But a lot of people would, is what I found out, and that's Love Over Gold, which is probably their, I don't know, most experimental record. Even some sort of progressive elements. It's like the 14-minute Telegraph Road opens with that. Private Investigations, I think, is the most brilliant song on here. But yeah, great. All right, let's go. Now, I'm gonna be honest. This is the last even good record that these guys put out. But Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Daylight Again, Southern Cross. Love that song. These guys don't look real rock and roll in these photographs, do they? So, anyway, but I think that's their last really good record. What else? What else? Oh, Van Morrison. Man, don't sleep on this one. Van Morrison, Beautiful Vision. I think it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Real sort of contemplative, as a lot of his '80s stuff was, kind of exploring spirituality and all this. But Dweller on the Threshold is great. Cleaning Windows is kind of funky. I don't know. I dig this whole thing. This is probably my favorite record from his '80s era. Is Beautiful Vision. Hey man, I like Huey Lewis. Picture this. This record had his first, semi hits. Was it? Oh yeah, Do You Believe in Love? Is great. Is It Me? Working for a Living. Obviously, the record that would come after this was massive, but the seeds of what was on the big record on Sports were already here. Just really catchy, great bar band stuff. I I don't know. Some of you guys are just gonna probably slaughter me in the comments for not having this, maybe even a number one. But yeah, Prince's 1999. Yeah, brilliant, genius double album. I think this is where a lot of people first discovered or first figured out that this guy was something special. Was here. Here's someone else who's pretty special. Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska, a special record. Man, now this obviously we did a Springsteen week a while ago, talked a lot about this, but his acoustic record. You guys know the story, right? These were demos. These were acoustic demos that he intended to show the band. It was going to be a full band album, but ended up loving the demos more, and so pretty bold move in '82. It really inspired a lot of other people who wanted to go basic later. But yeah, and just obviously brilliant songwriting and storytelling. Highway Patrolman, a film in 5 minutes. God, it's brilliant. Atlantic City, one of his best songs. Yeah, Nebraska. Did Genesis Week recently, so just talked about this, so I'll just show it. But Three Sides Live, they're mostly live album. If you get the American version with the fourth side as studio work, which is great. And then in the same year, Phil Collins put out his second solo record, Hello, I Must Be Going, my favorite of his solo work. One that's often kind of overlooked because the debut was big, and then, of course, No Jacket Required came after this. This is sort of sandwiched in between, but it's my favorite one, actually. I think it's great. Van Halen continues to be awesome. Diver Down. Talked about this in our Van Halen video. Oh, man. I told you 82 was strong. Yazoo, or Yaz. Upstairs at Eric's. Alison Moyet, however you say it, and Vince Clarke. Their great collaboration here, just superlative pop. And man, her vocals are just force of nature there, so good. I think I featured this. This is great world music, a landmark in world music. King Sunny Ade and his African Beats Juju music, Nigerian music, and I think I featured this, if I remember right, on one of our previous cult albums. So go, like I said, we've been covering a lot of records, so I'm gonna cut this short. But if you want to hear me talk about this, because it's very unique and interesting, go look. It's one of our cult videos. I feature that one. And then finally, I mentioned this once or twice before on my Halloween video for Spooky Records. I think the soundtrack for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, I'm a big fan of soundtracks. From John Carpenter and Alan Holworth. Very Vangelis-like, kind of synthesizers, real moody, kind of pulsing program beats and everything. I think this is a underrated soundtrack. It's really, really good. And, if you like the Vangelis stuff, I think this is right along with it. And spooky, look at that, spooky cover. Okay, man, 82. What a year. All right. Well, like I said, in the comments, did I leave anything out? I showed a lot. I leave anything out? Get the ranking wrong? Whatever. Let's talk 82. That would be great. Well, please do subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Really helps us do what we want to do, and like the videos, and that helps too. And hit the bell for notifications, all the usual stuff. And we'll see you next time.